Good morning. My name's Kyle Houchins. I'm a technical trainer for McNeil, and this is Getting Started Rhino 8 for Windows. And I'm going to build this little VR headset that I doodled up. And if you haven't been to one of these sessions before, it's a demo. I'm going to go fast, and this is probably, I'm going to try and knock this out in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and stuff like that. You're welcome to take off anytime these are recorded. This is all going to be posted on our YouTube, which is Rhinoceros 3D on YouTube. And you can catch up with the video later, but don't try and model with me, because unless you're really, really good already, you're gonna get left behind. So what I want to try and do is explain enough about how to do this and the philosophy behind it and the mentality behind it and how to think about something like this, which is kind of the goal of these. And so the way that I set this up is I do these sketches the night before, and this is, I'm doing air quotes with this sketch because the sketch is awful. And it was intentionally so because I'm going to kind of use Rhino to find the way along the way. I want to talk about how to design in Rhino, how to think in Rhino, how to plan for a model. It's very likely that I'm going to make mistakes. When I make a mistake, I'm going to point it out. We're going to talk about what happened and how to fix it. Occasionally, these demos go right into the fan. Anybody who's seen the hammer demo, that one is one of my more spectacular failures. The way that I do this is the night before or the morning of, I just do some kind of little chicken scratch sketch, and then I put it away. I don't think about it. I don't plan it. I don't pre-model any of this stuff. Because the goal of it is I want to put myself in the same position that you're in when somebody walks into your office, hands a sketch to you and says, build this, right? So these aren't canned, they're not rehearsed, which is going to be very clear as we get into this demo. You're going to be like, yeah, wow, he really doesn't rehearse this stuff. He's making it up as he goes along. And that is actually the goal of this. So it's much different than a lot of software demos you see. All of the warts and all of the sausage and everything, you're going to see how all of that's made. And if I break something, we're going to talk about it. And my long running joke is I break stuff so you don't have to. And that's just how this is going to handle. So take notes, sit back, drink some coffee, watch, feel free to ask questions. These are interactive. So I do have the chat window open. And if you need to ask some questions, please do. I'll check I got it stashed on my second monitor here. And if you have some questions, I'll definitely go through them and try to answer that. If I do something that you're like, whoa, what in the world was that? Say so. And I'll stop and try and do a little breakout and we'll do a little side quest and talk about how that worked. So my goal with this thing is the key component of a VR headset. And I'm holding the one, and I have a Quest sitting on my desk, and I'm holding it, and I'm showing it to you, which you can't see, is the front plate of this thing has a very often difficult to model shape. It's crowned in two directions, and it blends in nicely with the stuff behind it. The other part is the face mask area. And if I go into 3D, you can see that I have this head. I have no idea where this came from. It's probably not even mine. Unfortunately, I can't share it. So when you ask for it later, I can't share it because I don't know where it came from. So I can't hand it out. Stuff like this is easily findable on TurboSquid and all that kind of stuff. And just a quick talk about this thing is it actually was a mesh to start with. And I quad remeshed it, and then I turned it into a sub-D, and then turn it into a NURBS object. So if we go to shaded mode, you can see the patch structure that was the result of the conversion from mesh. I use the to sub-D command, TOSUBD, which converts a quad-based mesh into a sub-D, and then I use the to NURBS command, TONURBS, to convert it into a NURBS object. And now this is a NURBS polysurface, and if I unlock it and turn this on and change the display, because it drives me nuts that it's in white, I want it to be by layer. There we go. You can see that this is just an open poly surface. So, and the reason I did that is because I'm going to actually be projecting some curves onto this to be able to use them. And projecting curves onto a mesh is a challenge, because when you project a curve onto a mesh, what happens is each triangle receives a single straight line. So when you project something on there, it'll look like a curve, but if you actually zoom in and look at it, it'll be a poly curve made up of individual straight lines, and that can be a challenge to work with. So I converted this to NURBS, mainly for my own curiosity, because I wanted to see how the conversion went, but also there's a functional reason behind it for, you know, being able to work with this in a way that's useful. So I also brought in this sketch. This is just a picture frame. If you use the picture command, you can import any JPEG, PNG, TIFF, and put this in. And so what I did was I just took a screenshot. I took the screenshot into Sketchbook Pro, which is my sketchy thing of choice. I did a little doodle over top of it, and then I brought this back in, lined it back up, and then that gives you like a nice reference. And so I stuck this on a layer, and then I can turn it on and off as I need to, which is nice. And then same thing down here, I can turn the reference on and off when I need to. So that's just how I organize this stuff, and we're gonna go ahead and lock this image layer. Typically, I will put the image behind the object, but in this case, that's not gonna work, because if I take this and I stick it behind, I actually can't see it. And so I want to put this in front this time. A lot of my demos, you'll see I'll actually put the image way behind out of the modeling window so that it doesn't bisect. This is what I don't want to happen. Actually, I don't want it to slide off in space like that. I don't want it to do this because you can't see it in any direction. And so I'm actually going to just take it and stick it in front, put it on a layer, and then hide it. Lock it, and then I can turn it on and off as needed. And then I'm going to lock this thing so I can turn it on and off as needed. All right. Any questions about that so far? Everybody's cool with the picture frame command and all that kind of stuff. Do I need to show that? If we just run picture, find an image, and then drag it into the scene, it's just a plane. You can move it around. You can do anything you want with it, rotate it, all that kind of stuff. If you go into the image or into the material stack, it has its own material. You can see which one it is because it's got this little yellow doodad on it, and then we can adjust the transparency down here, which is essentially what I did to get it there. All right. Everybody good on that? So let's delete that, and we'll just get rid of this. So let's get started. The plan here, and one of my favorite quotes is from Mike Tyson, actually. It says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And so the plan is, right until we get punched in the face, is going to be to establish the connection between this object and the head, which is the most complicated part. So we're going to try and develop that curve that touches the face. And the body of this thing is actually fairly simple in itself. And then the other complication is going to be this crowned surface on the end of this. And we're going to talk about a couple of different ways to do that. One, we're going to use the quick and dirty one, which is Patch. And Sky Greenewald, if you know him, just had a chest pain and doesn't know why, because every time I mention Patch, he has a small stroke. The other way we're going to do it is actually the single span way, where we're gonna build a surface and we're gonna use history and curves and all that kind of stuff to get a really nice, clean, simple surface that we can mess with. So I'll show you both of those methods. You can decide which one works best for you, depending on your circumstances. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Any questions before we get started? Fabulous. Okay. So the way that I've lined this up, and I think I'm going to reconsider my plan on the curves on this thing. I think I'm actually going to go back and make this white. There we go, so that it doesn't confuse my sketchiness. And then I'll log that. All right. The red curves are the ones that I'm kind of using as the face mask, and then the black curves are kind of the ones that I'm using for the definition of the body of this thing. And the curves are garbage. The drawing is garbage, and it's kind of intentionally so, because I really want to to design this in 3D in Rhino, which is not something that you do often when you're CAD modeling. A lot of times people are just trying to copy something. And one of the beauties of Rhino is the fact that it actually is something that you can design in 3D, you can think in Rhino. And what I try to encourage everybody is to use Rhino as a design tool and not necessarily just encourage everybody to be CAD monkeys and copy stuff. And it certainly is a viable way to do it, but ideally we want to use this as an art supply and a design tool and something that makes us better designers, as opposed to, fighting the tool and just, saying, please, Rhino, give me something that's even close that's in my head. We don't want that. We want it to do exactly what we want. So let's talk more about that. So the first curve I'm going to develop is this outside one here. I drew a center line down the model, and I'm going to use that so that I can establish symmetry. And when we're designing something symmetrical, the very first point that we place for any curve off the center line has to be straight so that it mirrors directly across the center line. So we're going to place the first one here, and then we're going to place the second one here. And if you have not seen my rule of 3 video, that's the next one you should take a look at, because rule of 3 essentially determines all of kind of how I design curves and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to do just a 2-second chat about that. This is an anchor point. We're going to design a corner, and this is an exit anchor point. Corners always have 3 points. Not 10, not 25. We don't do this. Okay? This is what you want. This is what you don't want. If your corners look like this, start deleting points until they look like this. If you need a tighter corner, move it closer together. If you need a softer corner, move them farther apart. But everything works in sets of 3. And I'll let you go into the rule of 3 video to get the more detailed explanation on that, because I think my ambition may have gotten the best of me, and I think I'm going to need all the time today to actually pull this thing off. So I'm going to just do a little bit of adjustment here, grabbing the points, using gumball. And again, the idea is to get the most out of the curve with the least amount of points. And in this case, I may have overshot a little bit. Actually, that looks like that's going to be all right. All right, so let's take this one and we're going to mirror it using the mirror command. I have a hotkey set up for that if you wondered how I did that. And then we're going to join it. And let's isolate for a second and look at just the curve. And we want to make sure of a couple of things. One, anything that's across the center line, we want to make sure that these points are lined up and they're straight, because that means these are tangent across the center line. If they're not, what you're going to see is, and this is grossly exaggerated, but you're going to see you're either going to see this or you're going to see this at your center line, and you don't want that. So we don't want peaks, and we don't want cleavage or booties or whatever you want to call it, right? So when you look at your curve, if it's across the center line, if one of your points across the center line looks like that, you're going to have a discontinuity, even if it's a teeny little bit. And the way to fix this is you want to make sure that this point, this point, and this point are all in a straight line. And the way that we can do that is if we double-click the gumball, stick it at the center point, and then scale those to 0, all of them are going to line up. And you can tell because there's no handle. If there's a handle, right, if I move this guy and I select these 3 points, there's a handle here. So that means that these are now no longer in line. So when I select these now, you can see there's no handle, so that means that these are tangent. That's tangent, whatever you want to do with it, as long as those points are lined up across the center line, you've got tangency. Same thing down here, right? No handle, so that means these are lined up. I can do this and it's still tangent. I can do that. So these are the adjustments that I can make, and we can call that good. The rest of the curve is actually pretty well ordered. There's not too many points and all that kind of stuff. So let's bring back reference head. And let's just see what happens if we project this onto the model. And my guess is, and I'm going to do this with history on, I want to make sure always record and update children are on, my guess is what's going to happen is it's going to wrap too far around the head. And I can already see that it's kind of like getting into the ears and stuff. But let's just project it and see what happens. And we can then go into 3 dimensions and we can take a look at this and we can say, whoa, that is not at all what I wanted. And because we did this with history, we can interactively adjust this, and I can start scaling this in a little bit to get the 3D curve that I want. Doesn't really matter what the 2D curve is doing anymore. The 3D curve that I want, and that actually looks like it's kind of a decent fit. Now, the nose bridge is a mess, so I'm going to slide this whole thing forward just a hair so we can see it. And let's fix the nose. Grab just the points here, and let's go up a little bit. And you can see that the curve that we're developing is actually much different than what we thought it actually might be. And that's really kind of key. In fact, we may even want to come in here and grab these points and pull this in a little bit until it feels a little better, right? And that's probably all we need out of this curve. Once we have this shape, then the next thing that we want to do is have kind of a flange, right? Because it's got there's kind of a flat spot before it curves, if we're looking at it in this direction. There's like a little flat surface in here that kind of goes this way, and then, you know, we get a shape that looks kind of like that before it starts blending into the unit itself. And so what we're going to do is the same thing again. We're going to take this curve, and I'm going to copy paste it, and then I'm going to isolate it. I have a hotkey set up for that. And then I'm going to turn on the points, cell PT to select the points, and then I'm going to run the Move UVN tool. And what I'm going to do is what I like to call the Dave Schultz offset hack, because he's the one who showed this to me. Whether he invented it or not, I don't know. But what this allows you to do is to use the normal and scale this thing in to create in or out to create an offset. Now, the cool thing about this is the scale is actually your units. So if I want to offset 1 unit, I hit scale 1, and I drag this to the left, and that's going to be 1 unit. Now, this is obviously too much, so let's undo that, and let's say we'll do like 0.25. Now, I didn't establish scale, and everybody always comes from me in the comments, you know, you didn't establish scale, blah, 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 you don't know anything about product design. I'm like, I know how stupid I am. I'm married. If I want to know how stupid I am, I'll walk into the next room and ask my wife. She will tell me. I don't worry about scale on this because it's a demo, right? It doesn't actually have to fit on anything. I have no idea how big the head is. I have no idea how big this thing is. If you were doing it for real, obviously you would do that. So save your hatred. All right, so let's do 0.1, and now every time I go in, that's a 0.1 offset. So let's do like 0.3 or 0.4. And the cool thing about this, if I bring everything back, is when you look at this, these curves now, if I isolate that, have the same number of points. And not only do they have the same number of points, but they're distributed very, very similarly. And this is super important because when you do a loft, you get a very nicely parameterized surface. Okay? And if I turn the isoparams on for this, it's on. So see how nicely this is parameterized? It doesn't twist or do anything janky like that, but we do have a tangency break here, and we can see that because these 3 points are not lined up. So let's fix that. I'm going to double click the gumball center. Give it to me. There we go. Gumball center. I'm going to snap it there, and then I'm going to just scale to 0. That is going to line those up, and now my tangency is restored. I want to double check the same thing up here. We do have a little handle there. See that? That means those are not tangent, so I'm going to just scale that to 0. The handle disappears, and we know we're tangent again. So that's a nice way to get a little bit of an offset. Now, it's not a true offset. If you were to measure it, it's probably not mathematically perfect all the way around. But this is kind of an ish offset, which I think is super useful because it ends up giving you similar points, similar distribution. And so when you're lofting something, it makes it much easier to manage. So let's bring this back. We'll go to the front view. And we can look at this and say, that's probably not ideal right in there. So let's go back, cell point, cell PT, and I'm going to move this in the other direction until it visually kind of looks more like what I'm looking for. And we may need to actually get in and mess with the points themselves. I'm going to lock this head so it doesn't get in my way. And we may need to bring these in a little bit. I'm going to scale them to 0 again. And then I'm going to bring this down a little bit. That way we can adjust this so that it visually looks a little better from this view. Because we're working symmetrically, we want to grab both sides. We can obviously just do one side and then mirror it, but it's easy enough because we made curves that are simple and easy to manage. We don't have a ton of points to deal with. Makes it easy to kind of keep this all sorted. And I'm going to make this section a little fatter for all of my migraine peeps out there. Give them a little bit of a more padded forehead section. And then we'll project this as well. And I got to unlock this in order to select it. And then let's take a look and see what it did. And that section right there, we may need to tighten this up a little bit. Looks like I've got 2 curves here. Why? Oh, sorry. No, it's fine. And we did this with history, so when we adjust this, it should update. And I like that a little bit better. Let's move it down. Nope, got to get all 3 of them. This is kind of the crux of the model. So once we get this face part kind of sorted, then the rest of the model kind of starts, building itself. The next goal here, and you'll see exactly what's going on when I do this. These curves are utter trash. If we were to build something off of this, if we were to loft this, yeah, right? It's a mess. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild these. Actually, what we can do, let's try this. All right, let's delete these. We know they're in the right place, so we know that the projection actually works, but let's do this instead. Let's pull these curves using, instead of project, we're going to pull them. And we're going to pull these curves to the surface. And I got to unlock that. And we're going to pull to all of these surfaces. And we got to select the surfaces all the way around that it's going to pull to. I think we got them all. Nose, that one. I think we got everything. Let's pull that. What pulling does is it should, yeah, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. All right, fine. All right, we'll go back to project. What pull should have done is actually just pulled the point straight to those surfaces, but because it's a bunch of surfaces that are kind of mashed out in space, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So let's go back to project. I want to make sure. It seems like I've got two curves here. That's why. These guys in the back. Let's get rid of those. All right, so we'll project again, and then we'll deal with the consequences of that, which is essentially just a curve rebuild. All right, so let's get rid of these in the back because we don't need those. And then let's grab these, and let's try to do something a little better with both of those. So let's do a rebuild on these and just see what we get. That's probably not enough. And 4 is not enough. Let's do like 20 and see where we get. 20 is not bad. Let's do 22. We're getting closer. Let's do 25. Let's try about 30. That might be too much, but let's see. Not bad. Let's try about 35. It's still, let's go up a degree and see what happens. I always try to play with this a little bit and mess with the degree a little bit and see if higher degree works better. And I think somewhere around 30 is kind of feeling about right. We're getting everything except this nose bridge. In fact, I want to go down a little bit and see where it falls apart. So this is still not bad, and I'm not going to delete the input. I want to keep these so that I can use them as reference. But 20, see how most of this is looking pretty good? I'm going to go ahead and roll with that. And then let's just make the original curves red so we can see what's going on here. Display color, custom, and we're going to make them red. That way we can see what our originals were, and I'm going to actually lock these so that they don't go anywhere. And then we'll go to the right, and then I'm going to draw my center line again because I'm too lazy to bring it back. It's still there somewhere, but I'm going to trim off half of these. Just, it's not even worth trying to do both sides. And then I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup on this. So let's mirror this, and we can see exactly what's going on at that center line. See how all that stuff's messed up? I'm just going to drag select these, scale to 0, line them up. Now that's tangent. And I'm going to grab these 3 points and scale them apart a little bit. And then these points down here, we're going to move those down a little bit. You know, let's do one side because it's mirrored, so it should have history. And if not, we'll just mirror it over again. It's fine. All right, that's fine. Let's do that. We'll call that good. If I was doing this for real, I might fuss this a little bit longer, but it really, at the end of the day, for what we're doing, is fine. Again, lining these 2 points up, that gives us our tangency. I'm going to fix this point down here, pull this point out a little bit. And you can see that we're getting a lot of our original shape back. So let's mirror these, join them, and then take a look at what we've got. Now, if I loft these, we should be able to get a fairly decent distribution of points. And that actually is not terrible. And actually we've got some rebuild stuff in here that we can mess with and all that kind of stuff. But I don't like how the isoparams are all twisting. See that? That is kind of a drag. So I'm actually not going to use loft. I'm going to get rid of my original curves now. I'm not going to use loft. I'm actually going to use a one rail sweep, and we're going to do this from the end and the end. Should be. I actually delete it. I'm going to turn my points on so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to use a one rail sweep. And I'm going to change this to a degree 3 curve just so I've got 4 points now, because the straight line only has 2 points. It's degree 1. And that will give me the ability to, with history, do this, right? I can make it bulgy or flat or whatever I want to do. For right now, I'm going to do it straight. Obviously, make sure history's on, and then we'll deal with it then. And the reason that I'm going to use 2 rail sweep instead of loft is it gives you this ability to be able to add slashes. And adding a slash allows you to straighten out the isoparams. And this is a really nice feature of 2 rail sweep, because it allows you to be able to align those things so that they look a little bit better. And the cool part about that is the points now of this surface, if I explode this and look at the points are distributed in a way that makes a lot more sense. So if I wanted to modify these, if I selected all of these using cell U, selects all the points in the U direction. Now I can just use gumball to go burp, 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 right? I can just do all that kind of stuff, and it's easy to edit. It's predictable. I know what it's going to do, all that kind of stuff, and that's great. So let's go ahead and proceed with this and say that that is the first crux of the model that we needed to deal with. Now, the second part is actually going to be pretty easy, because this outer part of the face mask is where kind of we're going to add some thickness. So this is where it's contacting the face. And let's grab Control-Shift-Click the outside edge, and we're just going to extrude using this extrude dot, and we're going to add a little offset here. And this is going to make up, maybe that's a little aggressive. So let's grab this whole edge again, and let's just extrude it a little bit. Let's go like that far. That seems about okay. And then we can do a couple of things. We can run a blend surface between this one and this one if that was going to be the foam pad or whatever. But let's assume that we're going to be a little sloppy, and I'm just going to extrude this out a little bit like that. And then we're going to just do a 2 rail sweep again between these two, and that's going to kind of make up our foam pad. I'm going to chain the edges. And I'm going to do a slash in there because I don't like how that went together. This add slash is something that not very many people know about. I'm always surprised when I do demos. People are like, wait, what? This is super useful, especially if you're doing something like making a ribbon surface for a mold or something like that. That's a very useful thing. All right, let's bring our head back and see what we've got. So that we can assume is kind of our foam pad, and we'll talk about, smushing it around and making it softer and all that kind of stuff later. But that's pretty much kind of what we're looking for as far as the face mask part. So let's bring our image back, and try and figure out like where the, you know, where the body of this thing is going to go. And we might even want to use this curve. If I copy and paste it and then isolate it, we might even want to use this curve because it's already pretty well distributed and it's pretty well family of shaped and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about when I say family of shape? That was something that they beat on us in school about. Basically just the shapes are kind of harmonious with each other already. And so I might pull these out. Actually, I may just delete a few points here. Might get rid of these guys. And then I can adjust my bottom shape with these. Kind of like that. All right. So now we've got this curve, and I'm going to drag it forward in space. And let's bring our object back, and then kind of determine about where the exterior extents of this thing are. And I'm going to overshoot it just a little bit, and we're just going to extrude back, and we're just going to do like a big crazy overbuild on this thing. Okay, done. Thanks for joining. And let's talk about how this shape, and I'm going to hide this image for the time being, this shape on the end is going to come together. Now, there is all sorts of ways to do this, and the cheat, and I'm gonna copy this over to the side so we can talk about the cheat. The cheat is just to delete this, and I'm gonna place a point. I'm gonna use a between snap, and we're gonna place a point right in the center here. And if you don't have a between snap set up, between is a super useful thing to have set up sometimes. And if we go to toolbar aliases and we look up here, the command is just between. I have it set up on B, and the nice thing about it is this actually runs inside other commands. So if you say, for instance, want to scale something, but you want to scale it from between two objects, you hit the scale key or the scale command, you type B enter in the command line, and it runs the between command, and then it'll give you 2 points to pick, and then it'll use that as a center. And the way that works, you can see location of a point object. Well, I'm going to hit B enter, and it's going to ask for a first point. Well, that's the first point. That's the second point, and what it's going to do is drop it right smack dab in the center, which is super useful because now I can adjust the innie outie of this, and I know that it's halfway between here and here, and because this is the center, it's halfway between here and here, so that's useful. If we go to the patch command now, and again, we want to do this with history turned on, and I run patch, it's going to say, give me some stuff to work with, and I'm going to say that edge and the point, and we're going to preview it, and what it's going to do is it's going to give us this. Now, there's two things that we did here. We have adjust tangency and automatic trim. Now, some of you are going, oh my God, look, it looks perfect. And like I said, Sky's got chest pains and doesn't know why. The reason behind this is a pretty complex surface, and it's not bad, but if I don't trim it, you can see what the surface does, right? It kind of sticks past here. So it's basically a surface that's stretched out, and we can actually drop this a little bit if we say 5 and 5, and then we preview it. And I'm going to automatically trim this because I don't want to see that other stuff. And we can actually simplify this to the point where it looks not so bad, right? The problem is there's not enough fidelity on the edge in order for this to be able to join. So if we look at this, you can see that there's a gap here. And we need to make a decision whether we're going to go with this surface. And let's see what happens if we go down even more, like if we go 4 and 4. That surface is actually not so bad. And I may, as I'm looking at this, I may actually end up using this surface. But let's adjust it a little bit. And because we did it with history, this point actually controls how much puff or how much dent this thing has. And this is like a really nice iterative thing, because now we're designing, right? We can say, I don't like that. That's still a little, I don't like that. It still looks a little denty in the middle, so let's move this out like that and get nice and puffy. That actually feels pretty good. And if we look at this in rendered mode and we were to assign a material to this, let's get something shiny that we can see. Now, just so you know, the goal of this is not to create a perfect VR headset, right? If you came here for a perfect VR headset demo, you're going to be like, that sucked. The goal here is to talk about the philosophy and the mentality behind how you would build some of these shapes and how you would build some of this stuff. At the end, we're going to get something that's VR headset-ish, but you know, if you're looking for something that's going to be stunning end piece, you know, sorry. But you can see that this actually looks pretty nice, right? That I'm actually pretty happy with that. And so what I might do is I may stick with this, but let's talk about the other way to do this if we were to try and recreate this ourselves. And just so you know, this is actually trim surface. If I come in here and I untrim this, you can see exactly what's happening to the points for the rest of the surface. It's just trimmed off. So that's that. Now, there's another way to do this. And in this case, this is too thick, but all I have to do now that I have this is just move the gumball here. I can just scale this. And so now I can control how much puff or how much thick or how much whatever I want. And once I get this established, I may actually delete this, grab this edge, and then just do that. Now this will join. Should. Let's do this. Oh, I see what happened. Because it's a closed curve, it actually extruded a solid. So I'm going to get rid of that. And these two now should join. There we go. There was two surfaces on top of each other. Let's check the edges, and it looks like that did actually join. And if we render this, that actually is not so bad. Maybe that's what we'll end up with. That actually is looking pretty nice, and the reflections on it are pretty nice, and the surface isoparams are pretty nice, and all that kind of stuff. That might be how we end up. Let's talk about another way to do this. If I bring this over here, get rid of this edge, I need to do the same thing with my center point. And let's move this out a little bit. There's another tool in here called revolve that a lot of people don't know about, and I'm always kind of surprised. Let's change degree on this to 3, and let's set up our tangencies. And we know our tangencies, because of rule of 3, we're just going to snap up here, and then we're going to snap out here, and then this guy, we're going to snap out here. If your gumball's not snapping like mine is, change it to snappy dragging. Click on the little bunny tail right here, change that to snappy dragging, and now your gumball's going to respect those snaps. And then let's do a rail revolve, and that one's always kind of an interesting result. This is the curve that we're going to revolve. This is the revolve axis, and then the start angle is, it's got to go on the rail actually. We want rail revolve, which is the right click. Profile curve, there we go. Profile curve, sorry. Profile curve, rail curve, axis, and then it's going to rotate around like that. Now, the nice thing about this is because this is not a trimmed surface now, we can use the match surf command, and we can match this surf to this surf using tangency and end up with a really nice result. And if I throw a material on here, you can see that we end up with a very nice result that may or may not be better than what we had before, right? So now we got to decide, like, which one do we like? Do we like that one, or do we like this one? The rail revolve is actually looking pretty nice. The third way to do this, and I actually did a video on this that was on our YouTube page that was about like pockets and details and divots and dents and stuff like that, is using history. What we can do is we can take a curve and we can project it onto a surface, and then we can start stretching the surface in order to get what we want. And the way to do that one, let's start with just, let's go from the center, and I'm going to go between again. And let's do something like that. And I'm going to change the degree to 3 and 3 so that we've got 4 points in either direction. Now, just to make my life easy, I'm going to just take this thing and stick it in here a little bit and then run an intersect. And the intersect is going to give me a curve. Now, because I ran intersect with history, as I move this thing, that intersect curve is going to change, and it's going to go with me. Now, what I can do is turn the points on, and much like what Patch is doing, I can actually manually move these points to start getting my shapes the way that I want them to be. And this is a little bit different shape, but what I can do is I can come in here and now very carefully manually design this. And this is if you needed to do single span, if you were like a Class A nerd or something like that, and you really wanted to do like a crazy single span, like that was super important to you. What we can do is start manipulating this thing until the intersection of this curve gets to be as close as we can possibly get it to that curve. And so as I manipulate this thing, you can see that I can sneak in and get closer and closer and closer to that curve. And that will, at some point, as you keep fussing with it, will get as close as you can get it. And then you would just trim that surface. I'm not gonna do this for too much longer, but I just want you to kind of get the gist here. See how that disappears right there? That's too far. So this may actually need to come out a little bit. See how that's disappearing now? And then this one needs to come out a little bit. And then this one might need to come back, right? So this is kind of the fussy way to do it. But let's say that we've got that, let's say that that's good. And let's take this and we can scale these out a little bit if we needed to. And if we do that, we see how we lose our edges. So now these edges may need to come back. A lot of power here and a lot of, you know, kind of sculptability here and a lot of kind of, you know, cleanliness, so to speak. And it looks like that's intersecting all the way around. And so we can simply just trim this stuff and end up with something that we could then join. Then we can go ahead and apply a blend to it to get our And I'm going to right click on that command and get a blend instead of a fillet, because fillets are balls and blends use continuity. And then we'll put a material on that and take a look. So we've got 3 different techniques here for creating that bulged surface. Arguably, this is the cleanest one because you've got a single span surface and then a very controllable blend here. And you could do this with a pipe trim. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a video called Pipe Trim Trick where you actually use a pipe to cut a hole and then use blend surface to fill that in. We've got this one, which is a revolve surface, which we actually were able to use match surface on. And the benefits of this one are you can control the tangency pretty easily. The downside is the radial distribution of the isoparams. And you've got a seam right up the center that you may have to deal with. So if you have to build something across the center line, the seam could be an issue. And then you've got this one, which is patch, which is actually not bad. But we had to make a little bit of a compromise on our shape because this patch didn't have quite enough isoparams in order to be able to match what our original surface was. And so I think at the end of the day, the one I'm going to go with is probably this one, because I think this is the most traditional layout. This one's not bad, but the seam, may or may not cause an issue. There is actually a design element. If you look at the image, there is actually a design element that goes right down the center of this thing. And in that case, the seam actually may cause a problem. May not, who knows. But this one I know for sure won't. So I think I'm going to go with this one. So let's just pull this guy over. And I'm going to snap this to my midpoint right there. And we're going to call that one good. Any questions on any 3 of those styles of developing those surfaces? Is that new? Have you seen that stuff before? You guys are super quiet in the chat. All right. So let's kill these 2 and get rid of them. And let's call that good. And so now basically all we need to do is kind of, knit this stuff together somehow. And if I isolate these and hide the image, that's just kind of a simple matter of going into wireframe now and then determining kind of how these 2 things are going to fit together. And I would probably do that just with a straight line. I'm going to change the degree to 3. I'm going to grab that line and pull it here. And then I'm going to grab the 2 endpoints. Pull those back. Turn these on so I can see them. Pull these forward. Kind of something like that. And there's entirely possible that we're going to end up having to build some kind of transition between these 2. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Let's get this kind of like that. And we're probably going to have to hack this off too. It's probably going to be too big. But I want these to extend past the surface for the time being because we're going to use a new gumball superpower. Let's call something like that good-ish. And I want these to be in a line, so I'm going to scale them to 0. Same thing here. And I should make this symmetrical, but I'm being lazy, so I'm not going to. If that makes you mad, do your own demos. Let's pull this up like that. And then there's this little cutter icon, and I'm going to hide this because the cutter icon will go through anything it touches. So let's grab this and grab the cutter icon and just go bleep and cut that out. And that is our hacked out spot. Now, if for prototyping purposes, if I was just going to throw this through a printer, I might leave this solid. I might core the bottom out. I may do something so that I don't have a ton of material in here. But for this demo, I think I'm going to just kind of roll and not worry about shelling it or anything like that. Let's cut this off kind of about here. And I'm going to isolate just that. And then I'm going to use this curve. Again, cutter icon. I'm going to drag. Because it's in the middle of the model, I'm going to hold down Shift, so it's going to go in both directions. Doesn't like that, so let's go above it. Interesting. Do we have something open? Doesn't like that for some... Oh, probably because it doesn't go all the way through the model. Duh. If you use the wire cut, it's got to go all the way through the model. It can't miss something. There we go. And then if we wanted to like hack out the center of this, we could. Essentially, we can do a really cheap and dirty kind of little trick where we can grab this stuff, these curves, and then I'm going to drag gumball. I'm going to tap Alt. That little plus sign shows up, and those are going to make those curves. I'm going to flatten that. I'm going to join them, and then I'm going to scale it in just a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll use gumball, and I'm just going to shove something in there like that. And then we'll just do a Boolean subtract. Let's take a look and see how close it is first. That's a little chunky. Let's make it a little bigger. Let's make it kind of a little shelly, but make sure that it doesn't stick through. And then I'm just going to hog this out. And again, this is not refined. This is not like, you know, wall thickness or anything like that. So don't come for me in the comments. Let's take these two and figure out kind of how they fit together. And in this case, we probably need some kind of transitioning surface through here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull an isoparam out of here. And I'm going to use this extract isoparam. And I'm going to pull that one. And then I'm going to pull that one. And looks like I need one here. And then it looks like I also need one here. I have a hotkey set up for select curve, by the way, and the command is cell curve, SELCRV. And that is also something that I set up as an alias. So I have CC set up for cell curve. These are all things that you can do, by the way, to make Rhino super, super efficient. If you use commands a lot, like if I use a command more than once or twice in a session, I'll hotkey it so that I've got it for the future. And then I have a hotkey also set up for isolate, which I have II, and I think I showed you that already. Any questions so far? You guys are all still with me, thanks. Gonna mirror this. Join it. And the nice thing about extracting those isoparams is you know that it is exactly the inside of that shape, which means if I extrude this, it's going to come right directly out of the center of that model. And so what I can do is grab this face, Control-Shift click it, and then I can start pulling this in a little bit until it intersects kind of the way I want it to intersect. And then I'm going to scale it up a little bit. And I'll have to do something about how it hits the bridge of the nose down there, but let's just kind of roll with this. Whoops. Let's kind of roll with this right now. Again, you know, part of the thing when you're designing something in Rhino, instead of just, you know, model monkeying, is, you know, a little bit of find the way along the way, and which is a little more polite way of saying it other than F around and find out, which is kind of, you know, how I do things. But I'm going to mirror that, and let's just use this as a cutter. hide this, so I don't want to cut this. Helps if this is flat, so let's do that. That cut icon, see how that cut icon was gone? It's because my curve is screwed up. See that? So if I just scale it to 0, see how the cut icon returns? And then I'm just going to take this and I'm going to just shoot it right through the model. And that's going to chunk out this part. And there's a little, if we look at this from the bottom, we need to adjust the fit of kind of how that goes on the nose. So let's do that. And I'm going to kind of find the midpoint and then come down here. Cell last gives you the last thing that you just made, in case it's gone. Join this, and then that's all jacked up, so let's just scale it to 0 to flatten it out. I'm going to move it down here so I can see it, and then let's cut this up to about there. Got to go all the way through it. It doesn't like that, so let's make an extrusion. That's why I see that. Has to actually go through the model. That's my little checker for why if the cut doesn't work. Just extrude a surface and see. So now that works. That cut, by the way, is new to Rhino 8. That's not something that you have in Rhino 7. All right, let's make a transition between these two. And I am going to do a Boolean split. I think that'll work. Let's split this one with that one. Nope. So what we need to do is we need to, probably going to need to trim this manually. So let's delete this surface so we can see what's going on. And then let's grab this guy and we're going to trim that back. And we probably want to just go to the outside, so I'm going to click that. And then that should get us, let's work on these two surfaces. I'm going to extract these two surfaces so that I can just work with those two. And it looks like we need to trim this guy back now. So let's do that. That's a little ugly down there. I don't know if I love that. Let's maybe, all right. This will be our secret. You, me, and the 10,000 people who watch this on YouTube. It'll give everybody something to scream at me about in the comments. That's fine. So let's do this. So we'll join this up, and then let's do a transition surface in here, and we might want to do this with pipe. I'm gonna have to fix that. That's gonna suck. All right, let's undo this. Let's go back and let's actually fix this. I was gonna try and get away with it, but I don't think it's gonna work. So let's go ahead and let's do we're just gonna do a big fat blend surface on this. And if you start a blend, see how the handles are red? That means it's gonna fail. Drag it till they're white, and then it'll work. All right, so that's better. And I am going to, because I got one side done, I'm just going to split this in half and mirror it. Oops. I've got a hotkey set up for mirror Y, which is super useful. And that's a little better. So now let's bring this back. Let's get these guys. Now if we trim this, this is going to be a little less raggedy. And it looks like that doesn't intersect all the way. See how that surface is not intersecting? So let's fix it. So we're going to extract both of these and we're going to untrim them. And then we can trim them off. And then we'll join this all back in. And then that should trim now. And it did. Except for that side. Fine. Be that way. You don't have to tolerate surfaces that misbehave. You can just get rid of them. All right, that's odd. Let's explode that and join it again. I'm going to undo that, flip it, and then join it. Alrighty. That's strange. Let's kill our history. Stop it. Now you're just irritating me. All right. For some reason, that's not joining. And let's see if we've got anything weird going on. Like, is there any doubled surfaces? All right, that's super bizarre. I think I may have found a bug. That's weird. All right, I'm gonna just roll with it. The normals on this side are flipped for some reason. A little puzzled as to what's going on right there, but I think I may have found a bug. All right, regardless, let's go. Let's roll and see what happens. So I'm gonna chain this entire edge. And we're gonna start with something large and we're going to preview it and it's going to fail. Boo. All right. Hopefully. If you look in the trash, there should be an autosave in here. Let's see. How far back? 943. Oh. That's not awesome, but it'll get us something. If it's worth doing twice, right? You're like, wow, he really doesn't rehearse these. Nope. The upside is through the magic of editing, this will just be seamless. When you go see the video, you'll be like, wait a minute. That's why you can't believe anything you see on YouTube anymore. All right, so this went back quite a ways. That's a drag. All right, I think what I'm going to do, just for the sake of time, is I'm going to go ahead and just use what's here. All right, rabbit. Oh, this gives me an opportunity to show you something. This is actually kind of cool. Let me just adjust this real quick so that it's more in line with what I want, so that when I edit this, people are like, wait a minute, something has changed. Inset. Inset is a cool thing. This is actually a command that's new in 8. And what it allows you to do is grab a face and draw a curve right on the surface, which you can then use push-pull and do things like that. So that's cool. So that's one nice thing that I forgot to show before that I can now show. And let's go back and make this thing again. And we're going to move this a little closer. And I'm going to just go quick now. Happens to the best of us, or even me. All right, let's get this so we can see it. Something about like that. We'll call that good. We'll use the cutter. Grab the top view. Maybe this will come out better than it did last time, and then I can be like, edit that part in. All right, ink. Oops. Got to hide the stuff that you don't want cut, because the cutters go through everything. Let's cut it about there. We'll call that good. All right, I think we're almost back to where we were. It's so rare that I get bitten by a crash like that. I should probably save this. I realize when I edit these videos later how infrequently I save during a demo because I'm talking, and it's remarkable to me how few times I get bit, but it does happen. And let's see, it looks like we need to adjust the bottom cut down here. So let's do that. I have a hotkey set up for change degree, and I like the draw a curve and then change degree to degree 3, because what it does is it takes that degree 1 curve that's got 2 points and it makes a really nice clean degree 3 curve with 4 points, and that tends to make really nice clean surfaces. I'm thinking and talking at the same time, and I'm not doing a very good job of either one of them. All right, so let's adjust this intersection a little bit like that, and I'm going to call that good, and then I'm going to steal this curve because I know it's not the right one, and then let's hide this, and then let's use this cutter. Must be inside. There we go. All right, I think we're almost back to where we were. I think that's it's a little lower than I had it before. And we got to dig out the nose. Let's do it from the back this time. There we go. Mirror, join, and then let's dig out our nose. And I think I'm going to do this a little differently this time. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this back like this, and then in the right view, I'm going to drag this curve using the C-plane waffle so I can do this, but I'm going to hold down Control, and then I'm going to drag it down at an angle, and that's going to allow me to extrude a surface down at an angle. And then because this was done with history, it should allow me to do this. Too much. We'll call that good. And then this edge needs to come down more, so I'm going to Control-Shift-click this edge. Come on now. There we go. How we doing on time? Getting a little long here. All right, I think we're almost out of the woods though, so I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I'm going to Boolean split this. Let's build this transition again. And in this case, I think what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to come off of this edge instead. I'm just going to pull that forward. Double click to get that edge, extrude all those surfaces, and then what I'm going to do is drag, Shift Control, all these edges, and then scale to 0. And that makes those flat, which means I can join this. And I can cap it, which gives me an end on that. And then what I can do, this edge right here is tangent to this edge right here, which is not an ideal scenario. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow this surface a little bit. I'm going to copy paste, and I'm going to just cheat and just scale it just a little bit so that I've got a little wall thickness there. And then I think I'm going to get rid of, let's see, and then I'm going to scale this in. Let's put gumball up here. Double click the origin, by the way, to move the gumball, and then I'm just going to scale this till it intersects. And then I think what we can do, I wonder if we can do something clever here. I wonder if this will Boolean. Let's see. No, it won't. All right. I think I'm gonna cheat a little bit, and all right, let's trim this up again. Got a little bit better transition down at the bottom of there anyways. And it looks like it doesn't entirely intersect, so let's just do a little scale. Not entirely getting it in this section. It's close. Let's see if it works. It might not. We may have to adjust that section. That one trims, but the inside won't trim. Yeah, that won't trim. All right, so I'm gonna grab this edge a little bit. Nope, it's not gonna give me that. There we go. I'm gonna scale this edge in just a little bit. Ooh, I don't like what it did on that side. This side was fine, but that side was obviously not a degree 1 surface, so it messed up. And I think that, yeah, it's naked at the center line, so let's grab these guys. I'm going to scale them. Don't like that. Match surf. All right, looks like we've got an untrimmed surface here. So let's do this. See how it's not quite on the center line? Let's take gumball and let's stick it right there and then scale that to 0. See if that gets us there. I don't like that. All right, so let's untrim it. All right, let's just grab this edge. There, that's flat now. And now we can mirror it. There's a long way to go on this. Crash is a little bit of a hassle, but all right, let's get these guys put together now. And it looks like it doesn't quite match, doesn't quite come through there, so let's just turn the points on and let's go to the front view and let's just make them. I'm going to use the lasso command, which allows you to lasso some points, and I'm just going to pull those a little bit and use my hotkey to mirror that over. I hope this gives you a little bit of solace in the fact that even somebody who's been doing this as long as I have occasionally has to fight with some of these things. And looks like that doesn't all the way intersect, so let's fix that. I'm going to just take this and pull it through. That way we've just got a full intersection all the way around there between both of them. All right. Oh, Oh, you're still going to fight me. Come on now. Still don't have a good intersection. Sometimes it's easier just to copy stuff. When you're making your own stuff up along the way, it can be a challenge. All right. And the reason that wasn't trimming is because that wasn't joined. And it looks like that intersection should be good now. And if it doesn't trim, there is a trick here. If we say trim, and then we type CRV in the command line, that allows us to pick a curve. And what that does is that lets us trim using a surface edge. And it looks like it's still not doing it. All right, so then we have to explode this and figure out which surface is misbehaving. Because there's a surface in this poly surface that's misbehaving, and you can see that we're doing it individually and it works fine. See these guys? Those two right there are the problem child. That's why the rest of the trim was failing. So there's something going on with those surfaces that we need to deal with. It's kind of a rare condition, but it does happen, and the solution is to come through here and, you know, if you've got a poly surface that just will not trim, the solution is to explode the thing and then trim each part of the poly surface individually until you identify who the bad actors are, and it looks like it's these three guys right here. And so what we'll do is we will simply delete those, join everything up, and then we'll just remake those surfaces with a quick two-rail sweep. And then we know that they're going to be good. And it looks like there's something going on with this edge right here. So I'm going to try and merge it first. And it looks like it's not merging. And so because this is a symmetrical part and because this worked to the center line, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete half of it and get rid of the side that's misbehaving. And, you know, we could talk long and hard about, like, well, you should fix it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't care. I just want it to work. It's like I'm not getting into the technical details of why something is behaving or misbehaving. You know, I ran a consultancy for 20 years, and I didn't have the option of, you know, perseverating over why something was working or why something wasn't working or all that kind of stuff. I just had to kind of move and go on. So in order to avoid what happened last time, which was this is where the crash happened when I was trying to use the blend command, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the pipe trim trick, which is one of the things that I like that James Carruthers originally showed me. And I'm going to chain edges all. And what we're going to do is, and it looks like there is a discontinuity down here. And you can see it. That's fine. All right. So let's chain edges. Let's get all of these. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw some profiles. And I want this to be big and soft up here. So I'm going to draw a big profile down here. And then down here, I want this to be fairly small, so I'm going to draw a small one down here, and let's preview it. And it looks like we probably need one more profile over here, so let's do that again. And it looks like we're going to have some mess to sort out down there, which is fine. So let's do a couple of more profiles. And if you were doing this like, you know, for real, you'd probably pay attention to how big these profiles are so that they're actually, you know, numerically correct. But we're going to just move fast and break things. So that one I want it to be soft, and then maybe over here, kind of want it to be something like that. Let's see what that looks like. And that looks okay, except for down here, which is messy. So let's fix that. And we're going to delete these guys, and then we're just going to do a blend surf in between the two of these. Something like that. Join it up. We should have a closed poly surface. In this case, we do. And then what we can do is use this as a trimming object. See how that intersects all the way around? If we're living right, this should allow us to be able to trim a gap in this surface like that, and then go back in with blend surf, chain the edges, make sure it goes all the way around. And then create a blend surface, and we can add some shapes in here to help control how the isoparams spin. And the nice thing about this is it's continuity based, so you can come in and actually adjust your continuities to make sure that they're behaving the way that you want them to. And I just usually add a couple of shapes just to help the isoparams not spin like that. And then you can do tangency or curvature. In this case, I think tangency is probably plenty. And then we're going to say OK. Join it up. We get a nice transition in there. And then we can bring this back. And we can join this up. If I was going to be fussy, I would probably go through and actually, I am fussy. Who am I kidding? I'm going to pull this out like that. I'm going to shift drag this entire edge. I'm going to scale it to 0 to flatten it out, and then I'm just going to pull it back so it's inside that model. And that is still just being a pain. And so I think what I'm going to do is cell surf, join all of those. All right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this entire edge, and I'm just going to scale it, shift drag, until it stops being a pain. Because this is going to be inside the model anyways, and so we're not really going to see it. So let's join this up, and then cap. Now this is a closed polysurface. That's a long way to go for that. All right, rabbit. So we've got those two pieces, and we'll assume there's some kind of magical connection between there. Let's add some straps to the side of this, and we're going to just do this really quickly. And we're going to do this with a rounded square, and we'll just do something like that. Make that into a planar surf. Add some thickness to it. Let's move it till it sticks to the side of that. Go to the top view. I don't like how that's smashing into the head, so we're going to use the bend deformer, and we're just going to bend it a little bit. Let's round an edge. Way too big, so let's make that smaller. And let's mirror that. And let's make some kind of cutout for the ear. Cell last to get the last thing that you created, because in this case it's stuck inside the head, so I can't find it. Isolate just those pieces, run the cutter through it. And then let's do the details on the front of this thing. We're going to speed up now because I stopped making a mess of everything. I'm going to center this, and we're going to make a detail that looks, well, let's make it rounded. That's too big, so I'm going to turn the points on. If I scale it, I'm going to distort this thing. So what I want to do is turn it on and just grab the points. And then that way I can make this smaller without distorting it. And then I'm going to move this over here to about there. And then I will mirror that across. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to project this onto the face. And now that I've got curves on this surface, I can use push-pull. And I can just extrude these out. And then we'll throw a little round on this. They're going to be way too big. So let's set all. That might even be a little too big. Let's preview it and see how it goes. That works. And then let's inset this. And we're going to use the through point option. And let's go about there. Inset, by the way, is super useful. And then I can push-pull that in. To get the same amount, once I've done the first one, if I click on this and I just drag it in, but I don't left click to set a depth and I just right click to accept it, it'll use the same depth that it was in before. And then we'll put a tiny round on these, teeny tiny one. Let's double check and make sure that that is going to work, and it should. It'll remember the last value you used, so you can just go through and quickly do the other ones. All right, and then we've got to put our little camera pod. More little camera pods. I don't know if it needs these, but I'm going to just do them because they're cool. So let's do them. Let's do a copy paste. I'm going to just alt drag and tap. I'm going to drag the gumball, tap alt, and that's going to give me a copy. And then we'll mirror to the Y, go across here, and then do a Boolean subtract with these four guys. Hopefully they're not too big and go all the way through. That works. And then we'll just go ahead and add another little camera pod to actually kind of make it look like there's actually a little lens or something in here. And I can hear the comments already. That's not how VR headsets work. I don't care. It's a demo. Calm down. Somebody's always got to come for me in the comments. That's fine. All right, so we'll do that in just a little bit. All right, so where are we? We've got that. We just need to do a little strap around the back. We're almost home. You guys have been troopers. This has been a little bit of an odyssey. I appreciate everybody who has stuck in here with me. My dog just sighed. She gets so bored with my demos. All right, let's take this and mirror it. And we'll join. And turn the points on. A little bit of an adjustment just so it looks like it's somewhere near the head. Stop it. Stop picking that. I don't want you to pick that. There we go. All right. Just extrude that straight up. That strap is probably a little thin. And then I am going to do a solid offset in this direction and something small. That's going to give me that strap. This has got some kind of magical connection. And then we're going to do another one kind of up here. These are going to magically connect somehow. So takeaways from this, other than you should save your models when you're doing a live demo so that you don't have to start over in the middle of a demo, is this rounded surface on the front was actually the thing that kind of inspired me to want to do this. And I hope that that is the takeaway, because surfaces like that tend to be pretty difficult in order to make. I'm using the cell U command here, by the way, and then I'm shift scaling in order to give this thing just a little bit of crown. And then we're going to do a solid offset on that as well. Doop. Remembers the last value, so those are straps right there. All right, I think I'm going to stop torturing you and let you go. Maybe there's some kind of, I got to do one last thing here, and then he says he's going to stop torturing you and then continues to torture you. Good thing these are free. You sure got what you paid for today. All right. All right, let's clean up this mess. Let's go into rendered view. And let's take a look at this. And we should, just for presentation's sake, I'm going to just say that this is going to be a gray model presentation. We can always worry about do another video on rendering it. And then I'm going to sub-object select a few. I'm going to make a new material in here. One of the things I like about, from Rhino 6 on, you could do what's called a sub-object selection. Control-Shift-Click on a surface, and you can sub-object part of a poly surface. So this is all a closed poly surface, at least it should be. And what you can do is Control-Shift-Click parts of that poly surface, and then assign a material to it, so it's got a material inside a material, so that if you want to do a presentation, something like this would be an early concept presentation where you say, what if we did something like this? And you would want to print it and stick it on your head and see if it felt miserable. You don't have to do 2 models as far as doing renderings and stuff. You can just do 1 model and then break it up into, you know, pieces using the sub-object selection and the you know, sub-object assignment. And in this case, you can see it's still a closed poly surface, even though it's got different materials on it. And so that keeps you from having to build a model for rendering and a model for prototyping. So because this is closed, and I'm gonna cringe and say there's probably something still open in here. And what is it? I've still got something hiding in there. All right. Cell open poly surface, nothing lights up. That means everything in the model is closed. And that way you can do cell mesh or mesh the model, export it as a prototype part, and then send it to a printer. If it's symmetrical, why can you not work on one side and then mirror? Absolutely, positively could. It's just not quite as interesting of a demo to only work on one half. But if I was doing this for myself, I would probably work on one half. I go back and forth. Sometimes I will work on the whole model, or I'll cut it in half and work on one half. I definitely don't build the model twice. So anytime I'm building something that is symmetrical, I'll actually, you know, I'll build it once and then mirror it over. But it's a little bit more interesting from a demo if you can see the whole thing going on instead of just building it one half at a time. All right. Any other questions? I don't think I'm going to go any farther with the rendering on this. If we wanted to just, you know, throw this into ray trace mode, you could get something that's a little bit more ray tracey if you wanted to use that as a, you know, a quick presentation rendering or something like that. Okay. Any questions on, I'm calling this the bubble surface. Any questions on the bubble surface and how to create that? The differences between the single span pulling points, patch, rail revolve, any of that stuff? If not, thank you very much. This one went a little longer than I usually go. Unfortunately, had to recover from that little meltdown in the middle, but we got there, and I appreciate you sticking with me on this. This will be put together on YouTube later on today, hopefully. And then keep an eye on our webpage, on the Learn page. You can sign up for these getting started things, and then go from there. Other videos to watch. If we go to Rhino YouTube, which is here, I'll stick it in the chat. This is all where all of this stuff is going to go. Okay, the last one we did was this game controller, and all the other stuff is in here. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll let you go. Thank you very much. My name's Kyle Houchins. This was Getting Started Rhino for Windows, the hard way. Go make great stuff. Thanks. Bye.